Jalen Reagor getting traded to Minnesota changes nothing.
6'4" guys running 4.4s. These guys don't grow on trees. And a lot of times I'm willing to bet on, especially, long term, on the freak athlete.
You don't ever want to overreact to what guys look like in preseason. There's been a ton of preseason all-stars that never make rosters or never pan out. All right. Good evening, Belly Up Fantasy Live. How's everybody doing tonight? I am Chase Thornton, coming to you, as always, from the Mott and Bailey Basement Bar here for Belly Up Fantasy Sports. And tonight, on the Wednesday night weekly preview, we're going to look at the primetime games from this week. We'll look at tomorrow night's game, the Thursday night Battle of the Titans. We'll look at the Sunday night game. We'll look at the Monday night game. We'll talk about some of the other news going on. As always, if you guys have any start-sit questions, if you've got any trades going through in your league that you want to question or ask me about, please feel free to do that in the comments. We'll take a look at them. Hope everybody's doing well out there. Hope everybody's had a great week so far. I know mine's been busy. When you got a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old, it gets busy. Starting to get a little crisp, a little cool up here in Northwest Wisconsin. Fall is definitely here, football season. And I hope everybody's doing well. I know I'm ready for the raking and the screwing around with that to be done, but I'm not ready for snow. So you guys can keep that wherever you have it at the moment. Let's get right into it right now. Let's talk about the Thursday night football contest. We're going to talk about the Commanders and the Bears. And boy, I'll tell you what, if you guys have read my Thursday night football previews, listen, I've been pretty psyched up about some of the matchups so far this season. I think that they did a great job scheduling so far this year. They started off with a couple of bangers, but I'll tell you what, this one we've got tomorrow night. Ouch. We're talking about the Washington Commanders and the Chicago Bears. Now, listen, this game, it's got an over-under of 35. This is the lowest over-under of any game set this week. And okay, now I don't think there's any way that these two teams score this much. First off, there is a level of ineptitude right now going on both sides that's it's pretty hard to top. We've had such great contests, but you talk about the Commanders, you're talking about a team that really, they're the only team right now in the NFC East that doesn't look like they can be competitive. Even the Giants are 4-1. They're coming off a win against my Packers in London. They've looked, they've actually looked competitive and looked like they've got it going in the right direction right now under Brian Daboll. The Cowboys obviously have played very well, even in the absence of Dak Prescott. Cooper Rush has done a good job taking over there. And the Eagles then, of course, are the last undefeated team in football. They're coming off their closest game of the season and the only one that was ever in any doubt. But of the 4 teams in the NFC East, it looks right now like Washington is the only one that really cannot be competitive this season. Now, that's not to say that they can't win games and that they're not going to, that they can't make any noise whatsoever. But this is a franchise that just really doesn't look like they have a whole lot of direction right now. And it's costing them, and it's costing them on the field, and it's costing them. It's costing us as fantasy managers. There's a lot of offensive talent, a lot of offensive weapons on that team. And, it feels like they should be doing a heck of a lot better than they are. Now, last week, they host the Titans. Titans go ahead and, take them down by a touchdown here. And the Titans are not anybody's idea of a juggernaut so far this season either. You look at Carson Wentz had, not quite 22 fantasy points. He was 25 of 38, 359 yards, a couple of touchdowns. He did throw an interception. He always seems to throw an interception. He was sacked 3 times. We've had good Carson for 2.5 weeks or so this season. We've had bad Carson for about 2.5 weeks so far. This is something that, if you're going to go with Carson Wentz as your quarterback in real life or in fantasy, you're going to have to learn to take the good with the bad. The guy has a ton of talent and he can be a viable, NFL quarterback, but it just seems like he gets in his own head. And there are times when he makes some absolutely inexplicable throws and decisions. It's one of those things where right now he was a popular pickup after the first 2 weeks, and he should have been. He had a ton of points in the first 2 weeks of the season, but it's to the point now where if you picked him up, if you're relying on him as anything more than a streamer matchup based, or hopefully a backup for your team, you are probably hurting pretty bad right now in your, especially with the caliber quarterback play that we've seen elsewhere in the league, and with some of the guys who have been on the wire and remain on the wire, at least at this moment, remain on the wire. There are better options out there for you than Carson Wentz right now. Elsewhere around the Washington team, last week we finally saw the debut of Brian Robinson. That was nice to see. After 2 months ago, a guy gets shot in the rear end and the knee. And 2 months later, he's playing in an NFL game. Now, let me tell you, I try to be a hardworking guy. I don't think I'm too lazy, but if you shoot me in the ass and the knee, I'm not going to be running to the store for milk, let alone running in an NFL football game. So I think that's an absolutely amazing story for him. And his numbers weren't great. He only scored 2.2 fantasy points in PPR. He had 9 carries for only 22 yards. Didn't see a target, but honestly, he did see more touches than either of the 2 Washington running backs that have been there. Gibson only had 6 touches. He had 1 target that he didn't catch, but he had 6 touches. McKissick had only 5 touches, 5 catches out of 7. He did not attempt a rush. We saw in the preseason that they moved away from Antonio Gibson. And remember, it was a weird thing. Oh, Antonio Gibson's returning kicks. Oh, Antonio Gibson's playing a lot in the preseason. Brian Robinson looks like they want him to be the guy in that backfield. And for a guy that, like I said, just got off of being, shot multiple times, he looked okay. And it looks like they are going to give him the workload. I'm not going to blame 2.2 yards per carry necessarily on Brian Robinson. I mean, he is running behind the number 27 ranked offensive line by PFF. Now, granted, they've had some injuries. They've had tackles out there. They're not at full strength on the offensive line. And it looks like Sam Cosmi is still going to be out. But if you have not picked up Brian Robinson, if nobody in your league has picked up Brian Robinson yet, go out and get him, because you're going to have a starting running back in this league who is going to get, I think, the bulk of at least the rushing carries. And I think he'll start to work his way into the passing game as well. Of course, J.D. McKissick is the passing back there. He's the guy that they want on the field most of the time on third down. And because of that, he does have some standalone value in a PPR format. If you're in standard format, you don't want anything to do with J.D. McKissick. And at this point, going forward, it looks like you don't want anything to do with Antonio Gibson. It's really strange to say for a guy who was putting up top 10 numbers, quite a bit here last year, 2 or 3. But if no one has Brian Robinson yet, especially if you're looking for running backs, we're entering the buys. This is the first week of the buys. Run out and get him, because you're going to have yourself an actual starting running back shot in the arm during week 6. That doesn't happen a whole heck of a lot. Now if you want to look at the receivers on the Commanders, I know one of the big stories last week was Diami Brown. Now, here's what I want to remind you, and you've probably heard this if you've listened to other shows on the network or anywhere else. Remember that we do not want to overreact and chase touchdowns. Okay. Diami Brown has not played hardly at all, literally since they got him, since he came into the league. He's fast. He's athletic. He's not necessarily a great physical specimen. He's not a prototype physical specimen receiver necessarily. And he has not played a whole lot, but he has the 2 great big touchdowns last week, 105 yards, 2 catches, 105 yards, 2 touchdowns, 24.5 fantasy points. Hey, keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, that Jahan Dotson who has been playing. Jahan Dotson did not play last week. He was out. So there were snaps to be had there in that receiving core. That receiving game, that pass game is still going to pass through and go through J.D. McKissick out of the backfield, Curtis Samuel and Terry McLaurin, and when he's healthy, Jahan Dotson, with a sprinkling of, again, when healthy, Logan Thomas at tight end. Diami Brown is no better than literally the 5th or 6th at best option on this team. I don't recommend that you run out and get him. Now, I will also put a caveat on that, in that I have him in a couple of dynasty leagues, but I've got 7 dynasty teams. I've got a couple of teams that I took over as orphans and we're in full rebuild mode. I do have him in a couple of those. as a flyer. He's young. He's very young. He's still, a viable, guy that way. It's very conceivable, especially with the other guys that they have, other young guys they have on that team. It's conceivable that he finds himself in a better situation here in a year or two. So in a dynasty format, if you want to try and pick him up, go ahead, but do not blow all of your fab, or blow a number one waiver priority on De'Ami Brown this week or really any week, unless we see this going forward a ton more from him. I just think there's too much competition between Curtis Samuel and Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson and Logan Thomas and JD McKissick and on. We said it. Plus, it's still Carson Wentz throwing him the football. Speaking of Curtis Samuel, this is 2 weeks straight now after last week's loss to the Titans. That's 2 weeks straight that we haven't seen a rushing attempt out of Curtis Samuel, which maybe worries me a little bit because part of the shine of him so far this fantasy season has been that they've used him kind of in that Deebo Samuel role that we've all, come to love across the league, the Cordero Pattersons and that kind of thing of that wide back. And is he going to run it? Is he going to pass it? Doesn't matter where he lines up. Is he going to take a jet sweep type? Is he going to line up in the backfield, take it up the gut? Is he going to, run a pass pattern? And that's been part of the fun of him so far. He still scored over 12 points, fantasy points, 6 catches out of 8 targets. He led the team in targets, 75 yards receiving. He didn't have a terrible day, but he did not have a rushing attempt for the second week in a row. And Terry McLaurin caught 5 out of 6 for 76. They didn't score any touchdowns, but again, Terry McLaurin played on 98.4% of the snaps in that game. Terry McLaurin is on the field almost literally every single offensive play for the Washington Commanders. If you're going for receivers in that on that team right now, I'm suggesting that you take Samuel first. That you would want Samuel first out of any of those, then McLaurin, then Dotson, and like I said, only in the deepest of 2014 leagues or whatever you want to call it. Only then do you want to take a realistic look at De'Ami Brown. For the game now tomorrow night, Logan Thomas looks like he's going to be out. Tight end Jahan Dotson is going to be out again. Looks like we said. Jonathan Williams, one of the other 86 running backs that they have there now, is also going to be out, which probably helps Robinson a little bit more as well. I think with Jonathan Williams being out, I think they're going to want Gibson to actually take that back up role. I don't think they're going to give him a ton of run. It could be a good game for a Brian Robinson sighting there. He may be able to have his first, sort of I don't know if it'll be a breakout like in the traditional sense, but he may actually be able to have his first normal game as a NFL runner. On the other side of the field, we've got the Bears. They go out and lose to the Vikings last week, 29-22, kind of a heartbreaker. They actually were competitive. Listen, Justin Fields looked for brief flashes of time like an actual NFL quarterback. He's 15-21, 208 yards. That's the best he's had all year passing wise. Threw a touchdown, did not throw an interception. Way to be, buddy. Good work. Ran the ball pretty effectively, ended up with over 17 fantasy points in a PPR. Again, he's got a rushing floor. He's a rushing quarterback. Unfortunately, I think he is in the wrong place to develop as an NFL quarterback. Chicago is just not known for being able to do that. It seems like it doesn't matter who they've gotten in there. Remember, they had Mike Martz even years ago. They just do not seem to be able to develop a quarterback properly. I hope that, I'm a Packer fan, of course, but listen, for the kids' sake, I hope Justin Fields can have a good career. I hope he can develop into something. It would be fun, and the league would be better if the Bears were better. I'll put it that way. As a football fan, I can acknowledge that. But Justin Fields, man, fantasy wise, if you're in a 2 quarterback superflex type league, if you're in a real deep league and you're really hurting, if everybody's just gone and we're getting into the bye weeks now and your starter's coming up and man, who do I pick up? There's 3 guys left. Yeah, okay. Justin Fields at the very least gives you a little bit of a rushing floor, and he has looked better here the last couple of weeks. He's actually started to show a little bit of chemistry with Darnell Mooney, the best receiver on his team. Cole Kmet has actually caught a couple of balls, showed some signs of life. Now listen, he had 8.5 points last weekend against Minnesota, and he still has less than 20 points on the year. All right. He doesn't have any scores. He's got one red zone target on the year. As a tight end, to have one red zone target when we're a third of the way through the year, that really hurts. The Cole Kmet, preseason hype, I think, was something that most of the industry got wrong. I didn't have him ranked as highly as some other people did, but I think we all pretty much missed on that. I think we all thought, oh heck yeah, this is his moment, this is his time. That passing offense has just been so inept, for lack of a better term. They have not been able to get going, and a big part of that has been that Cole Kmet just has disappeared in that whole thing. Now Velus Jones got his first action last week, the rookie that they drafted out of Tennessee there, 7.9 points. He got his first NFL touchdown, a jet sweep run around the end. Actually made a nice play to get himself into the end zone. Again, if you want to take a flyer on him from a dynasty standpoint, you probably already did. I'm not going to be running out. I'm not going to be counting on anything from any Bears wide receiver. And that includes Mooney. Now, Darnell Mooney he's a good player, and I know he's been good for us in the past, everybody, but he has been dropped in several leagues that I'm in. People have just dropped him for other options, and there have been better options out there. I mean, you could not necessarily have told anybody at the beginning of the season that Curtis Samuel would be doing what Curtis Samuel is doing, and Darnell Mooney would be literally off the radar fantasy-wise. There are other options out there still on the waiver wire if you're looking for it. Darnell Mooney, if you've got the space on your roster, sure, it's worth hanging on to him, keeping hold of him. Like I said, we're coming up to bye week. You're going to need more players. You're going to need depth. And he has actually shown some signs of life here the last couple of weeks. But, I don't want to have to count on him right now. I do not want to. I don't want to have to even count on him as a flex play right now. If you have room, I have him in maybe 2 leagues. One of those I picked him up off the wire because I had the room on the bench, and I figured, well, it's worth a shot. This is just an offense that does not have anything going for it right now. Last week, David Montgomery came back, which re-relegated Khalil Herbert to secondary status and fantasy afterthought. This is one of those backfield situations where I think they're giving Montgomery, it feels like they're giving Montgomery the reps just because he's supposed to be the starter. Kind of like Zeke and Tony Pollard down in Dallas. Now, you can't look at what they're doing right now and say that Khalil Herbert hasn't looked like the more explosive player, the flashier player, the better player. His numbers suggest that he's been more efficient. He's played every snap. Yet they come out and they give Montgomery 12 rushes. He gets a touchdown. Yeah. And they gave him 4 targets. He got 62 more yards off of that. Had an 18-point day, over 18 points fantasy wise in a PPR. That's not terrible. Herbert comes out, gets 4 rushes for 11 yards, doesn't see a single target, and only played 14 snaps in the whole game. Ends up with 1.1 fantasy points for the day. And I cannot for the life of me understand why they are not making that at least more of a committee. Now, that doesn't necessarily still help anybody from a fantasy standpoint. I know all the Montgomery owners out there who took him as their running back 2 are not, necessarily cheering for a running back by committee in Chicago, with it being as low powered an offense as it is anyway. But Khalil Herbert he looks like the better option in a lot of time. It looks like he's the better option. I don't understand why they're not giving him more run, but they're not. For now, it looks like he's a stash. If Montgomery misses any more time, if he gets hurt again, Herbert jumps up and is a viable play again. He's a low end, maybe running back 2 with touchdown and higher upside. So in this matchup, so tomorrow night now, who do we want to look at playing and what do we expect here? Like I said, the over under there is 35. I'll tell you what, I'm not a betting man. But if you told me that there were going to be 5 touchdowns scored in this game, I'd tell you were, full of it. Right now, we look at how the defense is playing and what these teams have given up versus their opponents so far this year. You want to probably play both of these defenses. If you have one of these defenses, go ahead and play it. If they're out there on your wire and you need a switch for the week, you picked up a defense. You had the Chiefs defense. They're playing the Bills. You don't want any part of that, and vice versa. You may not necessarily want to play the Bills defense against the Chiefs, knowing what the Chiefs can do. If you're looking for a streamer type defense, you can do worse than both of these units here. Now they're not necessarily great, real life units, but they've done okay fantasy wise, and they're facing offenses that are not going to put up much of a fight. Okay, so you want to probably start both of those defenses right now. The Bears don't have a real great offensive line either. The Commanders actually are worse against the pass. They're better against the run than they are against the pass. They don't have Chase Young right now, so their best pass rusher is out. But they're facing the Bears. The Bears have one of the few offensive lines in all of football that PFF ranks lower than the Washington Commanders right now. The Bears are ranked number 29 on that. Again, it seems like that's been a bugaboo for them for several years. They keep trying to find the right formula. They've drafted guys, they've signed guys. Just doesn't seem like it works for them. So I wouldn't expect a ton out of most of your offensive starters in this game. I would look at seriously streaming either the Bears defense or the Commanders defense. Either side, it's kind of a horse apiece. They're both probably top 10, 12 type plays this week. The Commanders actually are really tough against the tight end. We just got done talking about how Chicago's tight end, Cole Kmet, hasn't been a factor all year. Well, he's facing the ninth best defense against tight ends in the league right now this week in Washington. Cole Kmet, take him off your board. I'm not necessarily, like I said, crazy on playing Mooney. If you've got Montgomery, you probably drafted him as your running back 2. If you can play him as a running back 2 or a flex, okay, you probably score a touchdown. Herbert stays on your bench. Justin Fields, I don't want anything in Justin Fields unless, like I said, I'm in a super flex league and maybe you were counting on Tannehill as your running back or your quarterback 2, and you need a guy to fill in for that for the week. Okay, fine. You could take a shot with Justin Fields. He's going to rush for some yards, but don't expect a whole ton of points there. On the other side, then, the Bears, again, they're 10th best against the tight end. Now, Logan Thomas is out, so obviously we're not looking at anything tight end wise from a Washington standpoint, but they are one of the worst teams in football against the run. And so we're talking about, if there's a good matchup for Brian Robinson's second game as a pro, first game as a possible starter. He played the third most snaps of any of their running backs last week, but it was really close. He was just 2 snaps behind Gibson and only 8 snaps behind J.D. McKissick. It was almost a perfect third split kind of. I would not be shocked to see Brian Robinson take most of the snaps this week. And if he does that, he's got an opportunity to play really well, even with the poor offensive line and the problems they've had in Washington, because the Bears are vulnerable against the run. They have been gashed on the run. They're giving up 23.5 points to opposing running backs on the year. Like I said, that's 8th worst in the league. All right, we are going to take a break here. We're going to hear from our top sponsor, Manscaped. When we come back, we'll talk about the Sunday night game.
Football is back, baby. We're back to seeing Mahomes sling beautiful balls all over the field, and your friends at Manscaped are here to help you sling your beautiful balls all season long. With Manscaped's state-of-the-art tech, we'll have your weapon looking more loaded than the AFC West. Football may be rough, but your ball care doesn't have to be with Manscaped. Join the 6 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by going to manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping with the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY. Meet the best valued bundle yet for the Manscaped Pocket Rocket, the Platinum Package. At quarterback, the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, a wily vet who makes sure the unit is running smoothly and scoring nonstop with proprietary advanced skin-safe technology. The Lawnmower limits mistakes and protects the ball. Plus, it's waterproof, so the weather conditions are no issue. At running back, the Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, built to bust through all the right holes. A hairless nostril just helps it keep a nose for the end zone. On the offensive line, we have our unsung heroes, the Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant and the Crop Reviver Ball Toner, the Trent Williams and Corey Lindsley of Sack Protection. standing strong to keep your boys fresh and clean through all 4 quarters. Add Wide Out, the cleanest duo in the league. The Ultra Premium Body Wash and Ultra Premium 2-in-1 shampoo plus conditioner. With their rugged scent, they attract both the ball and all the ladies in the crowd. Plus, these two leave your skin and scalp feeling more hydrated. That means more plays on the field and less water breaks. At tight end, the product makes your end look tight. Manscaped's anti-chafing boxer briefs, a dedicated jewel pouch to increase ball handling, and a cool, steady vibe thanks to their moisture-wicking fabric. On defense, there's only one thing you need: the aluminum-free Ultra Premium deodorant. With refined cologne, quality fragrance, it keeps sweat and locker room scents from making any ground. Plus, it dries clear so the opponent won't even know what hit them. To top it all off, we throw in the best coach in the league, the Shred Travel Bag, as a free bonus. Built to hold the team together, this travel-sized bag has a fumble-resistant zipper. This has got to be a Super Bowl winning roster, but don't take my word for it. Go to manscaped.com and get 20% off and free shipping with the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY. That's 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com when you use the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY. Manscaped, for turning your player into an MVP.
Oh, hey, you're back. All right. Hey, let me just put my various Manscaped problems away. I got the weed whacker. I'm going to put that back in my bag here. I took the time to refresh with a little bit of the crop reviver here, but we'll put that in the bag too, and I can do that on my own time. All right. Welcome back. Now, before we move on to the Sunday night game here, let's go ahead and I mentioned, hope you're paying attention, the week 6 buys. This is the first bye week of the year. We got 4 teams on bye this week. It's not quite bye-mageddon. Not quite bye-mageddon, but we've got 4 teams on a bye. We've got the Detroit Lions, the Houston Texans, the Las Vegas Raiders, and the Tennessee Titans. Now we're back. All right. So we got the Lions, the Texans, the Raiders, and the Tennessee Titans on bye. Now there's a lot of weapons there. Detroit Lions obviously have been one of the best offenses in the league. Unfortunately for them, they've got one of the worst defenses so far in the league. But you're talking, you're talking that Swift is still injured anyway, may not play, but Jamal Williams. We're going to be missing DJ Chark. We're going to be missing Amon-Ra St. Brown. We're going to be missing TJ Hawkinson. We're going to be missing Jared Goff, who's been one of those waiver wire pickup quarterbacks here and has been honestly giving you quite a bit from a fantasy standpoint. So keep that in mind. The Texans, Dameon Pierce, the rookie phenom running back that a lot of us have been able to rely on this year as a starting running back. Brandon Cooks, who hasn't quite shown up yet, but the Raiders. While we're on the Raiders real quick, I'm sure you guys have all seen by now and heard about the Davante Adams situation after the game the other night, shoving the camera worker down. Charges have been filed in that, and he does have a court date set. So it would not be the biggest shock to me to see Davante Adams miss a game or two because of a suspension. Okay, I believe the preliminary hearing was set for mid-November, I want to say. But just keep that in mind. If you're Davante Adams manager, you may be missing him for more than just this week here on the bye. The bye probably comes at a decent time for him to kind of try and get out of the spotlight a little bit. But don't be shocked to see the NFL hand down a game or two at the least for that. It really was uncalled for. They can't have that kind of thing. From the league standpoint, it's not great PR at all. It was wrong. It was wrong for him to do it. It's unfortunate. It's a player I've liked from the Packers. I think he's got a lot of respect around the league. But keep in mind, you're going to be missing him for more than just this week. Obviously, this week too, then there's no Darren Waller, there's no Mac Hollins, there's no Josh Jacobs, who has had an absolute 180-degree turn. Listen, I'm gonna come out right out now and say it, and you guys, you can all boo if you want. Listen, myself and just about everybody else in the entire fantasy industry got Josh Jacobs wrong this year. All the talk beforehand was always playing on the preseason games, and look at that. They want to trade him. They drafted Zamir White. They've got Brandon Bolden, and Brandon Bolden played with McDaniels in New England. And Amir Abdullah was supposedly looking good for the first time in his life, career, I should say, his pro career. He was pretty good in college. But we all whiffed on Josh Jacobs, fading him in our preseason rankings and draft boards. If you've had him, he has been a awesome surprise, especially if you came away with it hoping he was going to maybe be a flex option for you. And you were able to pick up 2 other good running backs before him. He has worked out tremendously. And then obviously the Tennessee Titans, King Henry is out. There's no Bobby Trees this weekend. None of their 87 semi-useful dart throw tight ends are playing. Ryan Tannehill will be out. So just be aware of who's on the bye this week so that you don't go into a game, shorthanded. All right. So let's move on now to the Sunday night game. Okay. The Eagles hosting the Cowboys. Great game. Looks, it should be a great showdown, even without Dak playing. This looks like a game that could be a marquee matchup and may have big ramifications for later in the year. Now we've got the Cowboys, are coming off the absolutely destroying the Rams. They made the Rams look pretty stupid last week, and the Rams have not been great so far. The defending Super Bowl champs have got some problems to work out, but the Cowboys made them look absolutely inept in a lot of ways last week. Now Cooper Rush has played very well, for Dak Prescott. He hasn't been a great fantasy option. He hasn't been great for their fantasy prospects necessarily, but the team is winning, and that's what they care about. They don't care if you or I win on Sunday with our fake football teams. Cooper Rush only had 3.98 fantasy points last week. He only attempted 16 passes, completed 10 of them for just over 100 yards. I think he had 102 yards, something like that. Didn't throw a touchdown. But he has been, and I said this, I said this in my article the other day, he's been pleasantly capable for them. And it's been a good surprise for them. Dak will play when he's ready and when he comes back. But Dak was able to throw today. Now, news reports came out that Dak Prescott was able to throw today. It's a good sign for him. But all this hype and talk for the last 2 weeks of, is he going to play? Is he not going to play? Listen, we're not going to see Dak Prescott this weekend. And if the Cowboys are smart, in my opinion, we're not going to see him maybe till after their Week 9 bye. They've got 2 very winnable games coming up here. I think they're playing the Lions. I think they're playing the Bears. They have 2 very winnable games coming up there. They should be able to get by without having to worry about quarterback play. They should just by default be better than the teams that they're going to be playing for the next couple of weeks. They have a Week 9 bye. You give him another couple of weeks off, get him right so that hand is healthy. We saw Russell Wilson trying to come back last year from a similar injury. Just didn't look the same. Didn't have the same kind of command of his throws. Didn't have the same kind of zip on things. The Cowboys are going to play Dak Prescott when he gets back, but he is not back yet, and he should not be back for a couple of weeks. Hopefully you've got better contingency plans going on right now. But yeah, Cooper Rush, unfortunately, has not looked like an answer if you're one of the owners who lost Dak. And he's not, like I said, been great for their fantasy prospects. I mean, that game was only 22-10. It wasn't like they shot the lights out there. Honestly, one of the best prospects from their team fantasy-wise has been their kicker, Brett Maher, and then their defense again, like last year. Number 1 ranked defense in a lot of scoring formats last year. Now, you want to look at the rest of the team, though. Tony Pollard, we just got done talking about him. 8 carries, had 86 yards. He ripped off the real big one. If you haven't seen that highlight, go look it up when we get off the air here. Just a phenomenal play, phenomenal run for him. But most of his stuff came on that one play. Otherwise, Ezekiel Elliott, they're going to feed Zeke. It's a Jerry Jones team. It's a Jerry Jones run team. Don't let Mike McCarthy's name next to head coach fool you. Okay. I don't care who the offensive coordinator is. I don't care who the head coach is. I don't care who the position coach is. They are going to feed Ezekiel Elliott as long as Jerrod Jones owns that team and Zeke's on it. Okay. Elliott had 22 carries for just 78 yards last week, did no touchdowns. He didn't have a target in the game. The last time Ezekiel Elliott played in a game, whether he left the game earlier or regardless, the last time Ezekiel Elliott did not see a target in a game in a regular season was week 9 of 2019. That's always been part of the charm, I guess, if you want to put it that way, of having Ezekiel Elliott, is that they used him. They would throw screens, they would throw dump offs, and they'd get him in space and he could go. As in addition to being able to run up the gut and run through the tackles. Now, they don't have the offensive line that they've had in previous years there. Zeke has lost the step, looks like he's lost the step. He's a little slow dealing with the injury from last season and that. He is not the same player that we've seen before. Now, I was a little higher on him on the preseason than some people were because, again, volume can be king. I really think that if they can get that offensive line figured out, if they can – and they're ranked fourth. They're middle of the pack right now, middle of the league, and they've dealt with their own injuries and their own losses on that offensive line. They're ranked number 14 by PFF on the O-line, so they're not absolutely terrible. They're not killing the team. It's just we've always seen the Cowboys' offensive line be a strength of theirs, and it is definitely not a strength this year. You combine that with Elliott's age and having lost a step, and the fact that Mike McCarthy doesn't know how to use two running backs who are both good. If you gave him a manual for it, Elliott he's not the I've got him in several leagues. I am not playing him in a couple of those leagues because I have other options available to me. I got lucky. I drafted Breece Hall in a couple of those. So I'm playing him in front of him. Honestly, I'm playing Devin Singletary in front of Ezekiel Elliott in a couple leagues. I don't have any exposure to Pollard where he was going in drafts. I didn't want that headache, but right now, Pollard's not getting the run that he should be getting. We've all lamented that. We've all been saying that for 2-3 years. It's time we all just accept the fact, face the fact. The Cowboys are not going to give him the run that we want them to give him. It's going to be the Zeke show in terms of targets and snaps and everything. We have to come to that realization and accept that. If you have Elliott on your team, you need to accept that as well. What you might want to try is taking Ezekiel Elliott and seeing if someone will bite on the name value for him and see if you can get something in return. Now, I'm one of those people who truly believes you need to trade fairly. I know that you don't care if the other guy wins or not, but he does, she does. If you expect them to give you something of value, you have to be actually helping them out in your trade. I'm not saying go, try and dump Elliott off and get, I don't know, DK Metcalf and Breece Hall in return. I'm not saying try to do something like that and fleece somebody. If somebody will bite on your trade offer, fine. But if you can get rid of Ezekiel Elliott right now and get out from under that headache, I think it's going to save you some heartache here going forward. CeeDee Lamb, 5 of 8, 53 yards, touchdowns last week. He did not, he didn't shoot the lights out, but again, over 10 points. We'll take that because he did not look real great the first week of the season. He's been playing without Dak. I don't think any of us thought that that Cooper Rush would be able to maintain what they've been able to maintain right now. So hold on to CeeDee Lamb. If you have to play him tomorrow night, again, you probably can have to play him because of where you drafted him. Michael Gallup is an interesting one. He's finally back from injury. He's played a couple games now. Came out in his first game, scored a touchdown right away. Didn't see a whole ton of time. Last week, 4 or 5, 44 yards. He was second among wide receivers. I think that with Gallup coming back, and he's looked okay. He's looked serviceable. He's looked like the same kind of player. We can expect 10-plus points from every week. It's what he scored last year before he got hurt, through 9 games. Before the ACL injury, he was averaging over 10 points a game, 10.3, 10.2, somewhere in there. And that was with Amari Cooper on the team and CeeDee Lamb. Now without Amari Cooper, Gallup steps up into that second role. There should be enough there for him to be at least a 10-point a game type receiver. So you're looking at a wide receiver 4 probably right now, but with 3 upside possibly, especially after Dak gets back, if they do throw the ball. But yeah, with that, one of the guys who has been kind of a nice surprise early in the year, Noah Brown, probably returns to fantasy obscurity. He had 7 targets, caught 3 of them last week, 32 yards, but pardon me, that's AJ Brown's line. I'm sorry, but he probably returns to. Noah Brown is probably fantasy irrelevant here from here on out, unless Gallup and or CeeDee Lamb was going to miss any more time. Dalton Schultz at tight end. He's gone 2 weeks now without catching a pass. He needs to get himself healthy. He needs to get himself right, and they need to get him the danged football. Dalton Schultz is one of their more effective weapons, and he's literally not contributed in the last 2 weeks. Normally a lot of times when you see a backup quarterback come in, we think, okay, hey, maybe the short stuff will be open because he may or may not be as comfortable with what he's doing in there. He may be looking for his check down shots. And Dalton Schultz definitely would qualify as one of those kind of targets, and he's been good at it for 2-3 years now. But he's been pretty rough lately, contributing to the overall woes of the tight end position. Again, if your name isn't Kelsey or Andrews, you're probably not. You probably have been just as frustrated as anybody else at tight end. It's been a complete and total dart throw every week, depending on who you have and who you drafted or who you were able to pick up. The guys who were getting the preseason hype, like we said, Kmet, Irv Smith, haven't Albert O. Oh my gosh. We'll talk about him in a little bit here, but Albert O, some of these guys who were getting some of this preseason hype have just absolutely disappeared. Kyle Pitts is getting absolutely nothing. And Dalton Schultz is just one more in that same vein where he has been an absolute just disappointment, especially the last couple of weeks here. When we look at the Eagles, they're tough against tight ends. They're 11th best in the league against tight ends. They only give up just over 7 points a game. Now, honestly, 7 points a game would be nice from your tight end during a bye week right now. I mean, 7 points is 7 points that somebody else probably isn't getting because they're starting, God knows who. And, Hunter Henry hasn't done anything. Daniel Bellinger, okay, caught a tight end that last week. Looks pretty good in flashes, but obviously he's not scoring anything. Evan Ingram, again, has looked nice on the field, but he hasn't been shooting lights out fantasy-wise. I don't know why anybody would be shocked about that. It seems like we always are waiting for Evan Ingram to come into his own. But, they're not great. They're not bad against tight ends in Philadelphia. Probably not a strong play for Dalton Schultz, but again, if you've got him, you probably have to play him. Now the Eagles have had a very tough defense overall. Okay. They're kind of middle of the road in terms of points allowed to running backs and receivers, but they are the 4th best defense in the league against quarterback. So even if you were thinking of trying to play Cooper Rush, if he's on your wire in your league, or you were a Dak owner and you picked him up, or you need somebody for a buy or stream or whatever, listen, look elsewhere. Okay. Cooper Rush against the Eagles defense is not a recipe for fantasy success. You're going to come away disappointed. Cooper Rush not playing against the Eagles defense last week had fewer than 4 points. He's, if he throws 1 touchdown, he beats that this week, but don't count on a great game from Cooper Rush. But for the Eagles standpoint, obviously Jalen Hurts, I don't have to sit here and tell you to play Jalen Hurts if you've got him. Okay. Another 27.5 point day last week, ran for 2 scores, didn't throw for a touchdown, but didn't throw in any interceptions, didn't turn the ball over that way. 61 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns. That's the kind of thing that we would love to take all day long from our quarterback, if you can get that out of your quarterback. And there are only a few guys in the league who are capable of that, and he's one of them. If you've got Hurts, obviously you start him, and it's not, it's a tough matchup. The Cowboys defense has been stellar all year. They look like they're good defense, on the field. They're good defense on paper for what we do in, digital programming. They're good. They've been the 6th best defense in the league against quarterbacks. They only give up 12.7 half PPR points a game to quarterbacks. Keep an eye on the matchup from that standpoint. I mean, it may not be Jalen Hurts' best game, but you've got to play Jalen Hurts because on any given week, he can be the QB1 in the league. Miles Sanders, another pleasant surprise this year. I think everybody kind of thought he was done. I think we all thought it was going to be the Gainwell show. Boston Scott would get some run. Then they brought in, I think, Trey Sermon after the 49ers cut him. Miles Sanders has been a nice surprise. Only 15 carries, 58 yards last week. Not a great game for him. That was a tough, hard-fought game, though. Wasn't necessarily great game script the whole time for him. But, he's a guy, too, that he's been a big surprise, like Josh Jacobs, like we talked about, where if you drafted him, you probably were hoping that he'd be a low end, too. You were hoping you could get away with flexing him. And he's actually been giving you pretty good starter numbers. They've used him like they probably should have been using him all last year as well. He's actually scored a couple times this year. Attaboy, Miles. Now, against Cowboys, they are the 5th best defense in the league against the run. They do not give up a ton of points. They only give up 15.6 half PPR points to their opposing running backs. And when Sanders doesn't get a ton of targets, we don't know how this game script will go. I would assume that, he gets the bulk of the carries though, because he has been getting the bulk of the carries. He got vultured a couple of touchdowns early in the season by Gainwell and Scott, but after that, man, it's been all Miles all day long. You could probably forget about Kenneth Gainwell. I had him in one league. I picked him up right after the draft in one league, my home league, hoping maybe I'd catch some kind of diamond in the rough there. You can probably forget about Gainwell for the moment. Boston Scott obviously has been hurt, and he's not a factor. But Miles Sanders is playable. He's probably a low to mid-tier running back 2 this week, though, because of facing the Cowboys defense. Obviously, you love the Eagles receivers. A.J. Brown, bit of a quiet week last week. Still saw 7 targets, only caught 3 of them, though. Devontae Smith had his another boom game. So we've now gone boom last week, bust the week before, big boom the week before that, bust the week before and the week before. That's just what you're going to have to ride with Devontae Smith. He's going to be that Tyler Lockett roulette type play where you never know if he's going to go off for 20-some fantasy points and score you a couple of touchdowns and get something long and somehow see 11 targets in a game or so like he did last week, or if he's going to give you 2 catches out of 4 targets for 22 yards. It's just kind of the surf and ride you take when you have a player like Devontae Smith. Like I always call it Lockett roulette, right? Because Tyler Lockett, damn well he's going to have a couple of those games where he's going to pop you for 30, seemingly no matter who's throwing the ball. But your guess is as good as mine when they show up, and it's the same way with Devontae Smith, I think. He's great in like a best ball format because you don't have to try and decipher when that's going to happen. It can just happen for you, and he automatically bumps up into your lineup. But again, if you've got A.J. Brown, you're playing him. You probably drafted him as your number 1. You should have. He's been that guy. Quiet week last week. Don't let it scare you off. Quez Watkins, a guy that a lot of people have given some hype to. Looks like a nice young player. Had a touchdown a couple weeks ago. Caught 3 or 4 targets for only 19 yards, this past Sunday. He's got some explosive ability, but again, realistically, he's probably the 5th option in that offense behind A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, one of the best duos in the league. Dallas Goedert, who had a big monster game last week with 8 catches for 95 yards for tight end purposes, 17.5 points, a monster game. And Watkins is probably behind the running backs in that offense as well. So, when we take a look at it, the Eagles O-line has been the best in football. According to PFF, they are ranked number 1. Look for them to be able to open some things up against the Cowboys, even though the Cowboys have a very good defense. You're talking about a good running offense here, a good offensive line. They are missing Jordan Mailata at left tackle. It probably looks like he won't play again this week. Jack Driscoll filling in for him last week struggled a little bit in their protection schemes and that. But again, they've got Jalen Hurts who can afford to, run around a little bit. And if you're gonna have your protection break down, you never want it to happen, but if it's going to break down, it's nice to have somebody back there who can outrun what's coming at him. All right. The line on this one here, 40 over-unders at 40.5. The Eagles are 3.5 point favorites right now. a hard one for me to read. I'd probably, honestly, if I had to guess, I'm going to say under just because these defenses are so good. I don't think this is a real high scoring shootout affair. I'm not a betting expert, but just my intuition feeling says we're probably looking at a not a crazy high scoring. This isn't going to be Lions Seahawks. Okay. All right, let's take a minute here. We're going to hear from our other sponsor, True Classic. When we come back, we'll talk about the Monday night game.
Football is back, baby, and our new sponsor, True Classic, wants you to look and feel your best even after a couple of brewskis or going full force on your fantasy football draft. Sure, it's football season, but it's also butt to couch season. Luckily, True Classic has the absolute best fitting clothing a man can buy. Snug in the arms and chest with a little extra space in the torso, their t-shirts are designed to keep you cozy and highlight your best assets no matter what you're up to. So if your special someone is upset that you're watching football all day, at least you can look good doing it. True Classic has already helped over 2 million men find the perfect fit at an affordable price. Our listeners get access to the best deal they offer. For a limited time only, get 25% off with the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY at TrueClassic.com. Almost all men's t-shirts are designed to look good on skinny models with six-packs, but most of us aren't packing anything but a few beers. Fellas, you are wearing the wrong clothes. True Classic tees taper off towards the bottom, but they fit tighter around the chest and shoulders. It's time to highlight your best attributes with a t-shirt you can always confidently throw on. It's about time to get your fit together, so upgrade your wardrobe with True Classic and get 25% off at TrueClassic.com with promo code BELLYUPFANTASY. Free shipping included on purchases over $100. That's 25% off at TrueClassic.com with the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY. If there's one bet you should make this football season, it's on True Classic. True Classic, look good, feel good.
All right, welcome back. Thanks to Dan Mader for that read there. So we'll move on to the Sunday night game now, or the Monday night game, pardon me. Broncos at Chargers. And this is one of those games, again, in the preseason, it probably looked like, hey, we got to have a real barn burner here. This should be fun, should be exciting. And then the regular season hit and life happened. And this matchup doesn't quite have the same shine that it had in the preseason. We all have seen, unfortunately, we've been kind of forced to see the Broncos struggles. They've been in prime time a couple times here. Last week, the Colts come into Mile High and blow them out in overtime, 12-9. 3 points was a giant event in that game. No touchdowns, overtime, just ridiculous. I put a message out along with everybody else on Twitter saying, hey, none of us deserves this overtime. Can we just please end this? Russell Wilson just has not looked like Russ this season. And now reports are coming out that he may be dealing with a lat muscle injury that's kind of slowing him down and hurting him. And won't he play? Is he questionable? Yeah, okay, maybe you're hurt that way. That's fine. But have you been hurt all year? Have you been dealing with it all year? And if you've been dealing with it all year, why are we just now hearing about this? We have not been impressed, and we shouldn't have been impressed so far. They haven't done anything impressive by what the Broncos have done on offense so far this season. And it's really been a disappointment with Wilson coming in. I think we all thought, hey, heck yeah, here we go. We're finally going to unlock Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy. I was high on Tim Patrick coming in the year because Patrick is another big body receiver like Cortland Sutton, like DK Metcalf that he had back in Seattle. And I thought, hey, they're going to unlock the potential of this passing game. Like we said, Albert Okwuegbunam had a lot of preseason hype, and Albert O has absolutely disappeared, which has really been a kick in my Manscaped area. I was high on him as a sleeper coming into the year. I had quite a bit of exposure to him. I've been able to move on from that in a lot of leagues. I've kept him around on some of my dynasty teams because he is young, he is talented, and again, there's no guarantee, especially now that they've got Dulcich, waiting in the wings who they drafted and who has been designated now to return from IR. So we may see Greg Dulcich sooner than later. But yeah, that passing offense has just been the whole offense itself has been a mess. Losing Javonte Williams would hurt any team with the talent that he brings. Gordon has been just a fumble machine. He hasn't been absolutely terrible running the ball, but he has to hang on to it. Now, that being said, he did hang on last week, had 13.3 points. He didn't score, but caught all of his targets and put up some yardage. Did not fumble, which was nice, finally. There's been some talk about Michael Boone maybe being a pickup for this week or for the future. Speculation like, okay, are they going to still split things kind of like they were splitting with Williams and Gordon? I think that the split will probably be a little higher than the Javonte Williams Gordon split was going. Boone has been in the league for a long time. They know what they've got out of him now. He's never been a superstar type player. Say what you want about Melvin Gordon, but he has been a reliable and big time player in the past. He was very efficient for them last year. There's a reason they brought him back. I don't buy into it just being because he's Russell's buddy from college. So I'm not getting all excited about going out and grabbing Mike Boone right now. But if you've got Melvin Gordon, good. I mean, you lucked yourself into a good situation. It really sucks for those people who took Javonte Williams, but honestly, even with Javonte Williams, we weren't getting a ton of points out of this team. Cortland Sutton has been usable. He's still the big body that Russell likes, but he had 11 targets last week, only caught 5 of them. Jerry Jeudy only caught 3 of 8 targets last. Russell hasn't been as accurate as we thought he might be when he came over. And so now, you're looking at a team that their quarterback isn't playing well. They've had injuries and uncertainty on the offensive line. Their left tackle now, Garrett Bowles, is on IR. So he's out. They've had a lot of trouble with their guard position. Quinn Miners has missed some time. Their draft pick who performed pretty well for them last year. So they're not strong on the offensive line right now. And their quarterback isn't playing well. They lost their best running back. So they're down to option 2A and 2B right now. Their tight end situation has been an absolute mess. From what looked like it was going to be a high-powered offense that you'd want a piece of in fantasy, this is becoming a real headache of a team this year. Now, Cortland Sutton is a playable wide receiver. Right now, he's probably like a wide receiver 2 type. Jerry Jeudy's probably flexible right now. Again, they just haven't seemed to put it all together with Russ. Russ is not necessarily a stardom if you have him, and not necessarily a start if you have to type quarterback. At this point, we have to see more out of him. I would not place him in the top 12 of quarterbacks right now in the league especially in terms of who you want to play for your fantasy team. What I tweeted the other day, I said, listen, the Seahawks chose Geno. Essentially, this is essentially what happened. The Seahawks chose Geno over Russell. They decided it was time to move on, and we're okay with Russell with Russell leaving. We're okay with Geno Smith in the building and Drew Lock. They chose Geno over Russell. It's probably time we as fantasy managers buck up to that and own up to it as well. And I wrote about it in this week's waiver wire pickup as well. What more does Geno Smith have to do before we're convinced that he's the better fantasy play at the moment than Russell Wilson? He still has all the weapons, or he has just as many weapons around him as Russell Wilson does. The only difference is Geno's actually hitting those weapons and using them, and they're scoring points, not just 3 field goals in 5 quarters. So if you've got Russell Wilson right now, I mean, man, independent of the injury situation and the possibilities that could come from that, if Geno is still out there on your waiver wire, and he probably is, there's a chance that he has a good chance now. People may have wisened up this week, but coming into the waiver wire article, he'd only been owning something like 38% of leagues. If Goff is still out there, I'm playing Goff when he's available. He's not available, obviously, this week with the bye, but Goff is a better option right now, fantasy-wise. Geno Smith's a better option fantasy-wise right now than Russell Wilson is. It's frustrating. It sucks. I know it. I was excited. You were excited. I get it. But at a certain point, things are what they are. We're 5 weeks into the season. It's not an anomaly anymore. It's not just 1 or 2 bad games anymore. Okay. It's not just shaking the rust off from the preseason. He had the full preseason. Remember, he had guys hanging out at his house, working out with him. All right. It's not like they're still working on shaking the rust off or anything. they're just not a very functional team. Now, add on top of that, Nathaniel Hackett has not looked anything like a capable head coach. Good at coaching football, better than the vast, the vast portion of humanity, which is why I'm talking to you right now and not getting the Broncos offense ready for Monday night. But he has the game management issues and some of the decisions, and the team doesn't look like they know what's going on or disciplined. It's a mess right now in Denver. I'm recommending that you play Sutton when you have Sutton. If you have Sutton, stay away from the tight end situation, especially tomorrow night. The Chargers are middle of the road against tight ends, but you don't know who the hell they're going to throw to. Albert Equigbenham had one target and didn't catch anything last week. Eric Saubert has been their best tight end on the year. He had 8.6 points last week. He's caught a couple scores, but they've thrown to Eric Tomlinson, who's basically their fourth string if Dulcich is ever healthy. When Dulcich gets back, I think they're going to try and give him some run. Albert O has pretty much disappeared. But then the minute I say that, he'll come out and he'll probably catch 4 or 5 balls for 48 yards and possibly a score tomorrow night. And then we're right back where we started, with everything. He scored 15, 16 fantasy points, and yay. And we'll all jump out on the waiver wire and try and grab him and be disappointed next week. So for the Broncos, it's in that game Monday night, they're playing a decent defense in the Chargers, and but yeah, I'm not playing Russell if I can help it at all. Melvin Gordon, yeah, he's a usable fantasy piece. Mike Boone, no. Sutton, I'm playing. If I have Sutton, I'm playing him. I'm playing him in several leagues. I have several shares of him. Jerry Jeudy, again, you might flex him unless you've got a better running back option. It's the bye week period, so maybe you're forced into putting him into higher up in your offense. But do not touch a single Bronco tight end. It's not worth it. The other side of the field now, the Chargers. Here's an offense that we expected to be high octane and did not necessarily look like it through the first couple of weeks of the season. They were not getting Austin Eckler as involved as they needed to. And then last 2 weeks now, Eckler looks like Austin Eckler again, and he's exploded a couple of 30-plus point games. Caught a touchdown last week, ran for a touchdown last week, 173 yards rushing. We got Austin Eckler back. Thank you. It's about time. We've been waiting for that, Austin. Justin Herbert didn't have a great day, but he didn't kill you either. 14.4 points. That's not what you want out of your top 10 ranked, quarterback and a guy that we thought was going to be as explosive as he was. Now part of that, listen, Josh Palmer, I think he's a good player. I have him in some fantasy leagues. I picked him up probably in 1 or 2 leagues, I think, of my redraft leagues, thinking that, hey, because as I've said before, and if you saw my dynasty rebuild article on wide receiver strategy, I recommended picking up Josh Palmer. Josh Palmer, physically, tool-wise, everything profiles a lot like Keenan Allen earlier in his career. But the problem is Josh Palmer has not necessarily put it together and operated the same way at the same level that Keenan Allen can operate. And that's kind of hurt everybody around them. Michael Williams finally has had a couple of decent games here. 23 points last week, 134 yards, 10 balls. He balled out and showed out like we had hoped he would the entire time without Keenan Allen. DeAndre Carter had some flashes, and now Jalen Guyton's hurting out for the year, but it's been a bit of a mismatch there too. Gerald Everett at tight end has come in and looked good at times and then looked absolutely, unusable like most tight ends do. Keenan Allen is still they're calling him day to day. I don't expect to see him even on Monday, even though it's a long week because they got Monday night. I don't expect to see him play Monday night. Don't be looking for anything from him yet. Their kicker. Now, if you saw their kicker last week, Bertolet, that was a great story, cool story. If you didn't hear about it, you didn't read it, didn't watch the game. Here's a guy who he's 29 years old. He's played in literally just about every professional league there is in the, Canada. He played in the American Association of Football or whatever the AAF that was called. He's played in the USFL. He's played all over, right? Been cut by several NFL teams. Finally got a chance to get into a game and be brought on by the Chargers. was a perfect 6 for 6 last week, 3 extra points, 3 field goals, including the one that ended up being a game winner. Great story for that kid. I was pretty happy about that. And looks like he's got some talent. So if Hopkins misses again, he's still got a quad injury. If Hopkins is out again this week, if you're looking for a kicker, again, streaming, whatever, matchup where a kicker might get some points because the Chargers might put some points up here on the Broncos. You could probably do worse than Bertolette. I'll tell you this. I would rather trust Bertolette if he plays. If Hopkins doesn't play, I would rather trust Bertolette than I would trust Hopkins if he played, if that makes sense. If you guys are picking up what I'm putting down there. With Hopkins and that injury and it being the Chargers, you never know. But it's kind of a cool story there. The Broncos defense has been actually pretty good. They're number 1 in the league against opposing wide receivers. It might be a little more tough sledding for Williams than it was last week against the Browns. So, I mean, temper expectations for that Charger offense right now, other than Eckler. And I mean, even then, the Broncos are top 10 in the league against running backs. They're the 3rd best team against quarterbacks. Their defense has not been necessarily the problem there. They just can't score any points. And unfortunately, I think they're going to have to score some points against the Chargers. So, start the guys that I don't have to tell you to start. Herbert, you're starting him as your quarterback. You're playing Eckler. Outside of that, one more admission that I will make, unfortunately. And again, you can let me hear it if you need to. So I was trying to read the tea leaves because that's kind of my job. And I wrote in the Blitz pickup article last week. If you read that, you saw me say that, hey, it looks like Sony Michel has taken a hold of the backup running back position here in San Diego, Los Angeles, pardon me. Sorry, San Diego, didn't mean to bring up bad memories. But you saw me say that because it looked like it. The snap counts were there, rising. His carries were rising. He outplayed Josh Kelly, but all of a sudden then Kelly comes out last week and has a 16-point game, rips off 10 carries, 49 yards, a touchdown. And Sony Michel has 0 yards on 1 touch. I don't necessarily know what to make of this backfield. If Austin Eckler were to get hurt, which is a possibility, it's happened before. I'm not necessarily sure how to read this situation right now. It may be this kind of thing we've seen on other teams where if Eckler goes down, Kelly, even though he's listed as in the second string, may not bump up into that lead role. They may just keep Kelly doing what he does, and they may bump Sony Michel up into that lead role. It's kind of what happened last year when he was in Los Angeles on the other side of the stadium with the Rams, is that, they didn't necessarily elevate Henderson from the role that Henderson kind of has always played for them. They bumped Michel up into more work. And that may be the same thing that happens here if Austin Eckler was to lose or miss any time. Right now, between the two of them, Kelly probably has a little bit more possible standalone value. Sony Michel, though, I mean, you can leave him on the bench for now, but if something were to happen to Eckler, Michel would warrant a quick pickup. He would rise to the top of the pickup charts there. Other than that, I mean, hey, that's the talk about the 3 games, the 3 primetime games this week. There's some other decent games on the list. I mean, we're talking, Ravens at Giants. I know that, that might be a little bit of a joke or sound like a little bit of a joke. You're talking about the 3-2 Ravens and the 4-1 Giants. And honestly, that might be a sneaky good matchup. It might be, and from a fantasy standpoint too, we might actually see some fun points scored there. Your guess is as good as mine. Who's going to catch the ball for the Giants other than possibly Daniel Bellinger? We have no idea if Kadarius Toney's going to play. No idea if Wan'Dale Robinson's going to be able to play. Pretty confident that Darius Slayton will play, but okay. He looked good last week, but that was 1 game in 3 years that he looked good. Cardinals Seahawks could be a fun game. Somehow, for the life of me, I cannot explain to you. If anybody out there can explain to me how the Cardinals are favored over the Seahawks in Seattle, hey, I am willing to listen and learn, because I can't for the life of me figure that out at all. How the Cardinals, with how they've looked this season and with what the Steelers have been able to do offensively, how the Cardinals are favored in that game is anybody's guess. But then we get the big marquee lineup. The Bills traveling to Kansas City to play the Chefs. Great googly moogly. And if you remember that, how's this for feeling old? If you remember the great googly moogly Chef's Snicker commercial, that's 25 years old now. That's a quarter century old. I saw that today and I kind of wanted to jump off my chair. But yeah, Bills at Chiefs. We got a great matchup. Rematch there. Bills are favored. It's the first time that Patrick Mahomes has been an underdog at home since he's became the starter in Kansas City. Josh Allen doing what? Remember when the knock on Josh Allen was that he had a big arm, but he wasn't very accurate, and now it's like he can put the ball wherever the hell he wants to put it on the field, and nobody's worried about that anymore. Man, what a turnaround that guy made! I love it. I love it. I actually had lobbied for the Browns. I'm a bit of a Browns fan too. Some of you guys know that. I had lobbied and said that, hey, I thought they should have taken Allen first overall instead of Baker Mayfield. I said, and at the time I said, hey, you play in the North. You've already seen what a big-bodied quarterback Ben Roethlisberger, is capable of, especially behind the good offensive line that they have in Cleveland and have had. But man, I don't think anybody saw quite this level of superstardom from Josh Allen. All right. Well, hey, that's going to wrap it up for us tonight. As always, you can find me on Twitter at STTChaseFFB. Catch me this Sunday morning, coming up Sunday from the Belly Up Fantasy Live Sunday preview edition with Andrew Leduc and hopefully Kevin Wilson. Hopefully Kevin's back. Kevin's been out and dealing with a personal issue. That's why I was writing the waiver article this week, pardon me. But hopefully he can make his return here. Kevin, we love you. We're thinking about you. And yeah, give us a click on Belly Up Fantasy Sports. Check everything out. We've got some great content going on there. We've got start sit articles. We've got waiver pickups. We've got stud and dud articles. The blitz pickup that I write is it's basically a usage report that comes out every week. We've got rankings. We've got everything you need to not only succeed in your fantasy league, but also, hey, if you want to make some bets, place some bets as well. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. We appreciate it. And till next time, Slanja.